You're not family. You only stayed because it was convenient. My daughter said that while signing the inheritance papers. My son-in-law stayed quiet. I just signed another sheet and left in silence. 3 weeks later, she found out what I had signed. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The rain tapped against my windshield as I pulled into the law office parking lot. My arthritic hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, partly from the pain, partly from the anxiety churning in my stomach. I didn't know why Olivia had called me to sign these papers today, but her tone left no room for questions. Just be there at 3, Mom. Don't be late. These papers need your signature, she had insisted. I turned off the engine and sat there watching raindrops race down the glass, feeling a knot of dread tightening in my chest. At 65, I thought I was past the stage of feeling like a scolded child, but the familiar ache of inadequacy washed over me anyway. The receptionist barely looked up as I shook the rain from my umbrella, droplets scattering across the polished floor. They're waiting for you in conference room B, she said, not bothering with pleasantries. The hallway stretched before me like an endless tunnel. Each step forward carried the weight of something final, a heaviness I'd been feeling for months now, the subtle shift in how Olivia looked at me. The way conversations stopped when I entered rooms, the whispered discussions between her and Nathan. I knocked softly before entering, my knuckles trembling against the wooden door. They were both there. Olivia in her crisp navy suit that screamed corporate success, Nathan beside her, his attention fixed on a stack of papers. Neither stood when I entered, the silence between us thick with unspoken tension. "You're 5 minutes late," Olivia said. Not looking up from her phone, her voice sharp with irritation. "I'm sorry, the rain was terrible," I explained, feeling a flush of embarrassment creep up my neck. "It's fine. Just sit down. We have things to do after this." I settled into the hard-backed chair across from them, placing my worn leather purse on my lap, my fingers nervously tracing the familiar cracks in the material. For a moment, the only sound was the shuffling of papers as Nathan arranged them in front of me, his face carefully blank. "These are the final distribution papers for Dad's estate," Olivia explained, her voice clinical and detached. "We've already gone through everything. This is just a formality to transfer the remaining assets." I nodded, though I knew there was more to it, a bitter taste forming in my mouth. After losing Richard 4 years ago, I'd moved in with Olivia and Nathan to help with little Ethan. What started as a grandmother's love, making breakfast, handling school pickups, reading bedtime stories, had slowly morphed into something else entirely. I'd become the live-in help, convenient but not quite family. The realization stung like salt in an open wound. Nathan slid the papers toward me. "Sign where the tabs are," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. It was the most he'd spoken to me in weeks. As I reached for the pen, my hand trembled slightly, betraying my inner turmoil. "What exactly am I signing away?" I asked, my voice softer than intended, feeling suddenly vulnerable. Olivia sighed, the exasperated sound cutting through me like a blade. "Mom, it's just formalities. Everything Dad left for both of us. The house, the accounts, his investments. We've been over this." I hadn't been over anything since Richard's death. Financial discussions happened without me behind closed doors. But I nodded anyway and began signing, swallowing my questions and concerns. "I'm glad this is finally getting settled," Nathan said to Olivia as if I weren't there, his relief palpable in the air between them. "We can move forward with the renovations next month." Renovations to my house? The home Richard and I had built together, filled with decades of memories. I paused, pen hovering over the next tab, my heart racing. "What renovations?" Olivia's eyes met mine. Something cold and unfamiliar flickered in them, sending a chill down my spine. "We're gutting the old place. It's outdated and we need the space for entertaining clients." "But that's my home," I whispered, feeling the words catch in my throat. "It's just a house, Mom. And technically, it's our house now." I felt the air leave my lungs, a crushing weight settling on my chest. "I don't understand." Olivia leaned forward, placing her manicured hands flat on the table. "Let me make this clear," she said, each word cutting like glass. "We're done playing house. You've been staying with us because it made sense when Ethan was younger. He's in school full-time now." "But I began, feeling foolish and naive. "You thought what? That you'd live with us forever?" "That wasn't the deal," she interrupted, impatience flashing across her face. I stared at my daughter, this stranger with familiar eyes, feeling a profound sense of betrayal washing over me. What deal? I came to help you after your father died. I sold my condo to be there for you. And we appreciated that, but it's time for you to find your own place, she replied coolly, as if discussing a business transaction rather than my life. My pen clattered to the table, the sound echoing in the sterile room. Where will I go? I asked, unable to hide the tremble in my voice. For the first time, Nathan looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat and avoiding my gaze. But Olivia's expression remained unmoved, calculating. There's a nice retirement community in Brentwood. We've already looked into it for you. The words hit like physical blows, knocking the breath from my lungs. A retirement home. They'd been planning this. All those hushed conversations, the sudden questions about what furniture. I wanted to keep the casual mention of an old friend who loved her new senior living arrangement. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. I reached for the pen again, a strange calm settling over me like a heavy blanket. I would sign, I would walk out, I would disappear from their perfectly curated lives. As I added my final signature, Olivia gathered the papers without a word of thanks. She slid them into a folder, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent light. The ring Richard had helped Nathan pick out for her. A memory that now felt like it belonged to another lifetime. Is that all? I asked, rising slowly, fighting to keep my dignity intact. That's all, Nathan confirmed, still not meeting my eyes. I clutched my purse, turned to leave, but Olivia's voice stopped me, cold and final. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're not family. You just stayed because it was convenient for all of us. The words cut deeper than any knife, slicing through what remained of my heart. I didn't turn back. I didn't let her see the tears that sprang to my eyes, burning hot against my skin. I simply walked out, my footsteps echoing in the hallway like a funeral march. 3 weeks later, she would discover what I had actually signed. 3 weeks later, everything would change. But in that moment, as I walked to my car in the rain, I was just an old woman with a broken heart and nowhere to call home, the weight of betrayal crushing my shoulders with every step. My small motel room felt simultaneously claustrophobic and painfully empty as I unpacked the single suitcase of belongings Olivia had deemed mine. The rest of my life, 4 decades of memories, trinkets and treasures, remained in the house that was no longer my home. I placed Richard's photograph on the nightstand, my fingers lingering on his smiling face, wishing desperately that he was here to guide me through this nightmare. You'd be so disappointed, I whispered to him, feeling the ache of his absence more acutely than ever. They've forgotten everything we taught them about family. That night, sleep eluded me completely. Every time I closed my eyes, memories flooded in. Not as gentle waves, but as a crushing tsunami of pain and longing. I remembered Olivia as a little girl, her front teeth missing, rushing to show me her spelling test with the gold star, her eyes shining with pride and looking to me for approval. I remembered her high school graduation, how proud Richard and I had been as she gave her valedictorian speech, her voice confident yet humble. I remembered her wedding day, how Richard had whispered, "We did good, Marie," as we watched her dance with Nathan, her white dress swirling around her like a dream. And then came Richard's diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months, the doctor said, the words still echoing in my mind with devastating clarity. He lived for 8, fighting with everything he had, his determination inspiring and heartbreaking in equal measure. "Promise me you'll take care of each other," Richard had whispered in his hospital bed, holding both my hand and Olivia's, his grip weaker but his eyes intense with purpose. We'd both nodded, tears streaming down our faces, a sacred vow between us. A promise I had kept faithfully, a promise she had discarded like yesterday's newspaper. When Richard died, Olivia was pregnant with Ethan. She and Nathan had just bought their new house. Their careers were taking off, and they were overwhelmed with the changes happening in their lives. It seemed natural when they suggested I move in to help with the baby. "Just until we get our footing, Mom," Olivia had said, her eyes pleading. It would mean everything to us. I sold my little condo without hesitation, my financial planning background telling me it was risky, but my heart overriding all practical concerns. What did I need it for? My family needed me. That was all that mattered. The first year with Ethan was a blur of midnight feedings, first smiles, and the pure joy of watching a new life unfold. Olivia went back to work, and I settled into a routine with my grandson, our bond growing stronger each day. We became a team, Ethan and I, his little hand in mine, as we explored the world together. But as the years passed, Something shifted imperceptibly at first, then with undeniable clarity. Olivia's requests became demands, her tone increasingly authoritative. Nathan's gratitude turned to expectation, the warmth in his eyes cooling to indifference. The guest room became Marie's room, not Mom's or Grandma's. A subtle but significant change that reflected my diminishing status in their home. Could you have dinner ready by 7? The Brightons are coming over. Ethan needs to be picked up early from school today. One of us will be home by 8. We've got that charity event tonight. You don't mind handling bedtime again, do you? I didn't mind, not really. I loved Ethan fiercely, loved being part of his life, watching him grow. But slowly, invisibly, I was being erased, my identity dissolving like sugar in hot tea. From mother to nanny, from family to staff, the transition was gradual but devastating. There was the Christmas party when I overheard Olivia introducing me to her colleagues. This is Marie. She helps us with Ethan. Not my mother. That stung, a sharp pain in my chest that lingered for days. Then came Ethan's school events where Olivia would arrive late, take over with a bright smile, graciously thanking me for filling in, as if I were hired help. Not his grandmother, who had been there since his first breath. The morning light was creeping through the thin motel curtains before I finally drifted off, exhaustion overcoming heartache. I woke to a pounding on my door that sent my heart racing. Disoriented, I fumbled for my glasses and checked the time, 10:37 a.m. I never slept this late, always the early riser, a habit from decades of financial work. Mrs. Bennett, you need to check out by 1100 if you're staying another night. A gruff voice called through the door. Yes, thank you. I'll be down shortly. I called back, my voice scratchy from crying and lack of sleep. I dressed slowly, my joints protesting more than usual, pain shooting through my fingers as I buttoned my blouse. Age or heartbreak? It was hard to tell the difference sometimes, both wearing down the body with relentless persistence. As I gathered my meager toiletries from the bathroom, my phone rang, the sound jarring in the quiet room. Olivia's name flashed on the screen. My heart leapt traitorously, hope fluttering in my chest. Had she changed her mind? Was she calling to apologize? I answered, trying to keep the hope from my voice. Hello? Mom, where are you? Her tone was all business, no warmth, no concern. At the Gateway Motel on Lexington, I replied, feeling foolish for my momentary optimism. A motel? Good grief. Why didn't you go to Aunt Patricia's? Patricia lived 3 hours away and hadn't spoken to me since Richard's funeral, when she accused me of monopolizing the sympathy. Olivia knew this perfectly well. I needed somewhere close, I said simply, swallowing my hurt. Whatever. Listen, I need Ethan's vaccination records for camp. Where did you put them? Not, how are you? Not, are you okay? Just another demand, another task for the help to complete. In the filing cabinet, in the study. Third drawer, blue folder, I answered automatically. The efficient organizer in me, unable to resist providing the information despite my pain. Great, thanks. She paused and I heard papers shuffling in the background. So, have you thought about Brentwood Acres? They have an opening next month. The retirement home, mentioned as if I had been considering it, rather than having it thrust upon me like a sentence. I felt a flash of anger surprising in its intensity. I don't think Brentwood is for me, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Mom, don't be difficult. It's a nice place. They have activities and people your age, she replied, impatience evident in her tone. No, Olivia, I repeated, feeling something shift inside me. A backbone I thought had dissolved, reforming. A sharp exhale on her end. Fine, but you need to figure something out. Nathan's mother wants to use the guest room when she visits next month. Of course. The other grandmother, the one who sent expensive gifts and took lavish vacations with Olivia and Nathan, but rarely spent actual time with Ethan, too busy with her social calendar to be bothered with the mundane aspects of childcare. I understand, I replied, though I didn't. I couldn't understand how my daughter had become this person, this cold stranger wearing Olivia's face. Good. I'll let you know when we're moving your things out. She hung up before I could respond, the finality of the click echoing in my ears. I stared at the phone, a strange sense of clarity washing over me like a cool wave. This call, so cold and transactional, crystallized everything I had been feeling but couldn't articulate. For years, I had been making excuses for Olivia's behavior. She was stressed. She was ambitious. She had so much on her plate. But the truth was simpler and more painful. She simply didn't value me anymore. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, Richard's photograph in my hands. tracing the outline of his face with my finger. I kept my promise, I told him, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. I took care of her, but she's not taking care of me. My eyes fell on my battered leather purse where the copy of yesterday's paperwork sat. The documents I had signed so obediently, the papers I had subtly altered with a single checked box before signing. A small act of self-preservation that Olivia and Nathan in their rushing arrogance had missed completely. In 3 weeks, when the processing was complete, they would discover what I had done, not out of malice, but out of necessity. The property in Cape Cod that Richard had left solely to me, our secret sanctuary, would remain mine, not part of the estate they so eagerly divided. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something. It was mine. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to think not about what Olivia needed, but what I needed. I reached for my phone again, this time calling a number I hadn't used in years, feeling a flutter of nervous energy in my stomach. "Hello, Thomas. It's Marie Bennett. I need your legal advice." Thomas Wilson's office smelled of old books and coffee, a comforting combination that reminded me of Richard's study. At 72, Thomas was semi-retired, but he'd been Richard's friend for 40 years and our family lawyer for nearly as long. His eyebrows rose as he reviewed the documents I'd brought, his experienced eyes quickly spotting the significance of my actions. "Marie, you checked box 14C, he said, looking at me over his reading glasses with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Did you understand what you were doing?" I nodded, smoothing my skirt with trembling hands, feeling both vulnerable and defiant. "I did. And they didn't notice. They didn't even look. Nathan just told me where to sign, treating me like I couldn't possibly understand the complexities of legal documents, despite my financial background." Thomas leaned back in his chair, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Crinkling the deep lines around his eyes, Richard would have appreciated the irony. He was right. Richard had always admired quiet strength, the kind that didn't announce itself but made itself known when it mattered most. In our 43 years of marriage, I'd seen him outmaneuver countless aggressive businessmen with nothing more than patience and attention to detail. "Tell me about the property again," I asked, though I knew the story by heart. I just wanted to hear it from someone who remembered Richard kindly, who saw him as the thoughtful, strategic man he was. Thomas's eyes softened, his voice taking on a gentler tone. 4 years ago, just after his diagnosis, Richard came to see me. He wanted to protect you, ensure you'd always have a place that was yours alone. He tapped the folder, his fingers emphasizing the importance of the document inside. The Cape Cod house was his gift to you. He specifically arranged for it to remain separate from the family estate. The Cape Cod house, our little sanctuary by the sea, we'd purchased it for a song 30 years ago when the area was still undeveloped. A risky investment that had raised eyebrows among our friends. Richard had seen the potential in the weathered little cottage with its unobstructed ocean view. Over the years, we'd renovated it bit by bit, turning it into our personal paradise, a labor of love that strengthened our bond. "The property has tripled in value since you bought it," Thomas continued, his eyes twinkling with satisfaction. "Conservative estimate puts it at about 2.8 million now." I gasped, feeling my eyes widen. "That much?" "That area has exploded in the last decade. Plus, Richard made some smart investments with the rental income. There's a sizable account attached to the property." He was always thinking ahead, planning for contingencies. A strange sensation washed over me, not quite joy, not quite vindication, but something in between, a warmth spreading through my chest. For years, Olivia and Nathan had treated me as financially dependent on them, conveniently forgetting that I had supported them countless times, both emotionally and financially. "When will they find out?" I asked, feeling a flutter of anxiety mixed with a strange anticipation. 3 weeks, give or take. When the estate finalization goes through, they'll realize the Cape Cod property wasn't included. Thomas paused, his expression growing more serious. "Marie, they're going to be angry." I smiled sadly, feeling the weight of years of disappointment settle on my shoulders. "They're already angry, Thomas. They just don't know it yet." The next day, I checked out of the motel, the small space having served its purpose as a temporary refuge. Thomas had insisted I stay in his guest house until I figured out my next steps. "Sarah would have my head if she knew I let you stay in that flea trap," he'd said, referring to his late wife with lingering affection. The guest house was a charming little cottage behind his main home, with a small garden and enough privacy to think clearly without feeling isolated. For the first time in days, I spent the morning calling the few friends I'd managed to maintain despite Olivia's subtle disapproval. Most were shocked to hear what had happened, their outrage on my behalf oddly comforting. But why would they do that? My friend Dorothy kept asking, her voice rising with indignation. After everything you've done for them, I had no answer. Or rather, I had too many. Greed, entitlement, the slow poison of taking someone for granted until they become invisible. A gradual erosion of gratitude that happens so slowly you barely notice until it's complete. On the third day at Thomas's, I found myself sorting through the single suitcase of belongings I'd managed to take with me. At the bottom, wrapped in a silk scarf, was a small leather-bound book. Richard's journal. He'd given it to me on his last Christmas, his handwriting shaky but determined. "Read it when you need to remember us," he'd whispered. I'd never opened it, too afraid of the grief it might unleash. But now, sitting in the quiet of Thomas's garden, with bees humming lazily among the flowers, I felt ready. I needed Richard's voice, his wisdom, his perspective. My fingers trembled as I opened the cover, the leather soft and warm against my skin. The first entry was dated shortly after his diagnosis, September 15th, 2019. Marie doesn't know I've seen through Olivia's plan. Our daughter has always been clever, but she thinks I don't notice how she's already rearranging our lives, making decisions about Marie's future. I've always been proud of Olivia's ambition, but I fear it's hardened her heart. I spoke with Thomas today about protecting Marie. The Cape Cod house will be her security, her escape if needed. I've arranged everything to keep it separate from the main estate. Olivia won't know until it's too late to contest. I hope I'm wrong about our daughter. I hope that when I'm gone, she'll show Marie the love and respect she deserves. But I've seen the coldness in her eyes when she thinks no one's looking. How she speaks to her mother when I'm out of the room. Marie believes the best in everyone, especially her children. It's her greatest strength and her greatest vulnerability. She won't see this coming until it's too late. I closed the book, tears streaming down my face, a profound sadness mingling with validation. Richard had known all along. He had seen what I couldn't bear to acknowledge, that Olivia had been planning to discard me for years. The next entry confirmed my fears, the words leaping off the page with painful clarity. December 3rd, 2019. Overheard Olivia and Nathan talking about elder care options for Marie after I'm gone. Not about bringing her to live with them, but about facilities where she wouldn't be lonely. As if warehousing my wife would be doing her a favor. I confronted Olivia. She claimed they were just exploring all possibilities. The look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching told a different story. She sees her mother as a burden, an obligation to be managed. I've added more to Marie's separate account. Thomas has the details. The Cape House isn't just a property. It's her independence. Page after page revealed Richard's quiet battle to secure my future. His growing concern about Olivia's character. His love for me shining through every word. In his final entry, written just days before he died, Richard seemed at peace, his words a testament to his foresight and devotion. April 28th, 2020, everything is in place for Marie. The Cape House, the accounts, all secured in her name only. Olivia doesn't suspect a thing. My greatest regret is leaving Marie to face what's coming alone. But she is stronger than she knows. When the time comes, she'll find that strength. I've loved her since we were practically children. She deserves so much better than what Olivia is planning. I hope someday our daughter realizes what she's throwing away. Not just her mother's love, but her own capacity for compassion. Marie, if you're reading this, remember you were always enough. More than enough. And you deserve a life filled with the same kindness you've given others. Don't let them convince you otherwise. I closed the journal, clutching it to my chest as the sun began to set over Thomas's garden, casting long shadows across the grass. For the first time since that awful day in the lawyer's office, I felt something other than grief and betrayal. I felt a spark of determination igniting in my chest, growing stronger with each breath. I felt ready to face whatever came next. The ringing of my phone shattered the morning quiet of Thomas's garden. I didn't need to check the caller ID. The specific tone I'd set for Olivia years ago blared through the peaceful space like an alarm. Exactly 3 weeks had passed since that day in the lawyer's office. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and answered, "Hello, Olivia." "What the hell did you do?" Her voice was ice and fire simultaneously, burning with rage while cutting like a frozen blade. I set down my tea, surprising myself with how steady my hand was. No tremor betraying my inner turmoil. I believe you'll need to be more specific. The Cape Cod property. It's not in the estate paperwork. The lawyer said you checked some box that kept it separate. She spat, accusation dripping from every word. Box 14C, I said calmly, feeling an unfamiliar confidence fill my chest. You knew exactly what you were doing. She was practically screaming now, her controlled facade cracking completely. You deliberately tricked us. The accusation might have wounded me a month ago, might have sent me spiraling into guilt and self-doubt. Now it almost made me laugh, the absurdity of her outrage striking me as darkly comical. I signed documents I was asked to sign. If you and Nathan had bothered to review them properly, or treated me with enough respect to explain what I was signing, you might have noticed. This is theft, she hissed, her voice vibrating with fury. No, Olivia. It's mine. The Cape House was always mine. Richard left it to me specifically, separate from the estate. He made sure of it. Dad would never. She began, but I cut her off, unwilling to let her rewrite history. Your father knew exactly what he was doing, I interrupted, surprising myself with my firmness. He saw how you were treating me even before he died. He wanted to make sure I was protected when he couldn't be here to do it himself. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds, heavy with unspoken emotions. We're coming over, she finally said, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Where are you staying? I hesitated, feeling protective of my sanctuary. Part of me wanted to refuse to keep my refuge private, but another part, perhaps the stronger part, wanted to face her, to stand my ground. I'm at Thomas Wilson's guest house, I said finally. The old lawyer, why would you? Never mind, we'll be there in an hour. The call ended abruptly, leaving me sitting in the garden, my heart pounding. I sat motionless for several minutes, processing what had just happened and what was about to happen. Then I called Thomas. They're on their way, I told him, my voice calmer than I felt. Just Olivia and Nathan, I think. Do you want me to be there? He asked, concern evident in his voice. No, I need to do this myself, I replied, knowing this confrontation was mine to face. I paused, feeling a flicker of vulnerability. But maybe stay nearby. I'll be in the main house. Just shout if you need me, he assured me, his steady voice a comfort. I used the next hour to prepare myself, not just emotionally, but physically. I showered, styled my hair, and put on my favorite navy dress, the one Richard always said made my eyes shine like sapphires. I wanted Olivia to see me not as the discarded mother, but as the woman I truly was, strong, dignified, whole. When the doorbell rang, I was ready, my shoulders squared and my chin high. Olivia stood on the porch, Nathan slightly behind her. She wore her power suit, the one she saved for important negotiations and courtroom appearances. Her eyes widened slightly at my appearance, as if she'd expected to find me disheveled and broken, an easier target for her anger. Come in, I said, stepping aside with the practiced grace of a hostess. They entered the small guest house, Olivia's gaze sweeping critically over the modest furnishings, her nose wrinkling slightly in disapproval. I led them to the sitting area, where I'd prepared coffee and Olivia's favorite lemon cookies, the ones I used to bake for her school lunches. Let's get to the point, Olivia said, ignoring the offered refreshments, her posture rigid with tension. You deliberately withheld the Cape property from the estate division. I didn't withhold anything, I replied evenly, feeling surprisingly calm in the face of her anger. The Cape house was never part of the estate to begin with. Your father left it directly to me. That's impossible. Everything was supposed to be divided equally, she insisted, a flush of anger coloring her cheeks. Not everything. Richard made specific provisions for me. The Cape house was my security, my future. Nathan cleared his throat, speaking for the first time. The property is worth almost $3 million now, he said, his tone suggesting this fact changed everything. I'm aware, I replied simply. Be reasonable, Marie, he said, dropping the mom he'd used for 15 years. The loss of the title stinging despite everything. That's a significant asset. It should be shared. I looked at him steadily, holding his gaze until he looked away. Like your home was shared with me before you decided I was inconvenient. The question hung in the air between us, heavy with accusation. He had the grace to look uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. Olivia paced the small room, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood floor like angry punctuation marks. This is ridiculous. You're being petty because we asked you to move out. You didn't ask, Olivia. You informed me I was being discarded. I kept my voice calm despite the emotion churning inside me. And you didn't just ask me to move out. You told me I wasn't family. I never said, she began defensively. You're not family. You just stayed because it was convenient. I quoted, her exact words burning between us. Those were your exact words. Her mouth opened, then closed. For a brief moment, something like shame flickered across her face, quickly replaced by defiance. I was upset, she finally said, her tone defensive. But that doesn't change the fact that you deliberately deceived us about the Cape House. No, I simply protected what was rightfully mine, just as your father intended, I replied, feeling strength in the truth of my words. Nathan leaned forward, adopting his negotiation posture, the one I'd seen him use countless times with clients. Look, we can work something out. Sell the property and divide the proceeds. That would be fair. Fair. The word tasted bitter on my tongue, years of suppressed hurt rising to the surface. Was it fair when I sold my condo to move in with you? When I spent 5 years raising your son while you built your careers? When you introduced me as the help rather than your mother? When I handled your finances, managed your household, and gave up my own life to support yours? Nathan had the decency to look uncomfortable, a flush creeping up his neck. But Olivia's expression hardened, her jaw set in a stubborn line. Always the martyr, she snapped, her words like a slap. No one forced you to help with Ethan. No, they didn't, I agreed, feeling a surprising surge of confidence. I helped because I love him. Because that's what family does. Because I believed in keeping the promise I made to your father. And now you're punishing us by keeping the Cape House, she accused, her eyes flashing with anger. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I'm not punishing anyone, Olivia. I'm simply taking care of myself since you've made it clear you won't. A sudden noise from outside drew our attention. Through the window, I could see Ethan riding his bike in Thomas's driveway, with Thomas pretending to chase after him. The boy's laughter floated through the open window. A bright, innocent sound that cut through the tension in the room. Is that... Olivia stood abruptly, her expression shifting to alarm. You've been seeing Ethan behind our backs? No, I said firmly. He's here with Thomas. It's the first time I've seen him since I left. Olivia moved to the window, watching her son play, his small figure darting across the lawn with childish abandon. For a moment, her expression softened, the armor cracking to reveal the mother beneath. He's been asking about you, she admitted reluctantly. Wants to know when Grandma's coming home. The words pierced my heart, a bittersweet ache spreading through my chest. What did you tell him? That you needed some time to yourself, she turned back to me. Something almost vulnerable in her expression. What was I supposed to say, that we kicked you out? You could have told him the truth. That you decided I wasn't needed anymore, I suggested quietly, feeling the weight of Ethan's absence like a physical pain. Nathan stood, joining Olivia at the window. Look, this is getting us nowhere. The fact is, we need to resolve the property issue. I squared my shoulders, drawing myself up to my full height. There is nothing to resolve. The Cape House is mine. We could contest it, Olivia threatened, her lawyer persona resurfacing. Take it to court. You could try, I agreed calmly. But Thomas has all the documentation showing it was Richard's explicit wish. Plus, you signed the papers too, Olivia. Her face flushed with anger, 2 bright spots of colour on her cheeks. This isn't over. Actually, it is, I replied, standing to signal the end of our conversation. I've given you both 15 years of unwavering support. I've loved your son as my own. I've managed your finances, organised your lives, and been available whenever you needed me. I never complained, never asked for recognition. And when you decided I was disposable, I left without a fight. I walked to the door and opened it, the gesture clear. The Cape House is non-negotiable. It's my home now, my sanctuary, just as Richard intended. Olivia stared at me, her expression a mixture of rage and something else. Perhaps respect or simply surprise at my newfound backbone. Ethan misses you, she said abruptly, her voice softer. He cries at night. The words were like a knife to my heart. But I refused to be manipulated, to have my grandson used as an emotional bargaining chip. He's welcome to visit me. I'm still his grandmother, even if you've decided I'm not your mother, I said firmly, though it cost me to maintain my composure. And where exactly will he visit you? Here in this guest house? She asked, her tone dismissive. No, I said, my decision crystallizing in that moment with perfect clarity. At the Cape House? I'm moving there next week. Olivia's mouth fell open in genuine shock. You can't be serious. It's 3 hours away. I'm very serious. It's my home now. The finality in my voice seemed to startle her. Nathan placed a hand on Olivia's arm, guiding her toward the door. We should go, he said quietly. a note of resignation in his voice. As they stepped onto the porch, I called after them, unable to completely sever the connection despite everything. Tell Ethan I love him. That will never change, regardless of what's happened between us. Olivia paused, not turning back, her shoulders tense. This isn't what Dad would have wanted, she said, her voice tight with emotion. I smiled sadly, though she couldn't see it. Actually, Olivia, it's exactly what he wanted. He knew me better than anyone, and he knew you too. They walked away without another word, straight-backed and rigid. Through the window, I watched as they approached Ethan, who was still riding circles around Thomas. The boy spotted his parents and quickly abandoned his bike, running to them with open arms, his face alight with innocent joy. But before he reached them, he turned and waved enthusiastically at me through the window, his smile wide and genuine. I waved back, tears stinging my eyes, a bittersweet mixture of grief and hope washing over me. This wasn't the end, I realized. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I reclaimed my life and my worth. The Cape Cod house was exactly as I remembered and entirely different at the same time. The weathered blue shutters, the creaking front porch, the way light danced across the hardwood floors in the afternoon, painting everything with a golden glow. All this remained unchanged, a testament to timelessness. But now, without Richard's booming laugh filling the rooms or his reading glasses perpetually misplaced on various surfaces, the house felt both hollow and full of possibilities, an empty canvas waiting for new memories. It had been 2 weeks since I'd moved in, bringing my few possessions and purchasing necessities to replace what I'd left behind. 2 weeks of reacquainting myself with solitude, of learning to hear my own voice again without the constant background noise of other people's expectations. The silence was deafening at first, then gradually comforting, like a warm blanket on a cold night. I was arranging wildflowers in Richard's favorite crystal vase when the phone rang. Unknown number. I considered letting it go to voicemail, then changed my mind, a spark of curiosity overriding my caution. Hello, I answered, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt through the open windows. Mrs. Bennet? A man's voice, hesitant, familiar. It's Nathan. My hand tightened around the receiver, surprise coursing through me. Nathan, this is unexpected. I know, he acknowledged, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I'm in town. Near you. I mean, in Cape Cod. Why? I asked bluntly, suspicion immediately rising. I have a conference in Boston. I drove down to. I don't know why I'm here. Honestly. He sounded different somehow. The polished veneer cracked to reveal something more vulnerable beneath. Could we talk in person? My first instinct was to refuse, to protect the sanctuary I'd created. But something in his voice gave me pause. A note of genuine regret that caught me off guard. There's a coffee shop called Seabreeze on Main Street. I can meet you there in 30 minutes. I found myself saying, curiosity winning out over caution. Thank you, he said, and I could have sworn he meant it. Gratitude evident in the two simple words. Seabreeze was quiet for a Saturday. Just a few tourists lingering over late lunches, the atmosphere casual and unhurried. I spotted Nathan immediately sitting at a corner table, staring into a mug as if it contained answers to questions he hadn't yet asked. He looked different somehow, his usual impeccable appearance slightly rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. He stood when he saw me, awkwardly pulling out a chair. Thank you for coming, he said, genuine relief in his voice. I sat studying him carefully, noting the subtle changes in his demeanor. Why are you here, Nathan? He twisted his wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd noticed years ago but had almost forgotten. I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last spoke. About what you said, about how we treated you. I waited, unwilling to make this easier for him, to smooth over the jagged edges of our broken relationship. Ethan cries for you every night, he continued, pain evident in his voice. He doesn't understand why you're gone. The mention of my grandson sent a sharp pain through my heart. And what have you told him? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Nathan looked genuinely pained, running a hand through his hair. Nothing that makes sense, not even to me anymore. We've told him you're on a trip, that you needed some time away. But he keeps asking when you're coming back. He misses you terribly. He took a deep breath, his shoulders rising and falling with the effort. The truth is, I'm here because I need to apologize, he said, the words coming out in a rush. Of all the things I'd expected from this meeting, a direct apology wasn't one of them. Olivia doesn't know I'm here, he added quickly, glancing around as if she might materialize at any moment. She'd be furious if she knew. Then why risk it, I asked, genuinely curious about what could drive him to defy my daughter. He looked out the window toward the ocean. Barely visible in the distance, a strip of blue on the horizon. Because I can't sleep. Because every time I look at Ethan, I see the hurt in his eyes. Because I stood by while Olivia treated you like you were disposable, and I know it was wrong. I sipped my coffee, giving myself time to process his words, to search for hidden agendas. It wasn't just Olivia, Nathan. You were complicit, I pointed out, unwilling to let him off the hook too easily. He nodded, accepting the accusation without defense. I was. I let it happen because it was easier. Because confronting Olivia is... He trailed off, seeming to search for the right word. Difficult, I finished for him. Familiar with my daughter's forceful personality. She's always been strong-willed. That's a charitable way of putting it, he said with a rueful smile, a flash of the more personable man I'd once known. She's become... I don't know how to describe it. Cold. Calculating. Not just with you, with everyone. He hesitated, then added quietly, including me. His silence was answer enough, confirming what I'd suspected about the state of their marriage. Ethan asked me yesterday if we could visit you, he said after a moment, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. I didn't know what to say. Olivia has forbidden him from even mentioning your name. The pain of that revelation was physical, a knife twisting in my chest. He's 7 years old, I said, unable to keep the emotion from my voice. He shouldn't be caught in the middle of this. I know, Nathan agreed, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. That's partly why I'm here. Would you be open to seeing him? If I brought him without Olivia knowing? The question hung between us, weighted with implications and complications. I thought of Ethan, his gap-toothed smile, the way he'd curl against me during thunderstorms, his endless questions about the world. My grandson, my heart walking around outside my body. Yes, I said simply, feeling a surge of emotion. I would like that very much. Relief washed over Nathan's face, his shoulders visibly relaxing. Thank you. He misses you terribly. I miss him too. Every day, I admitted, allowing myself that vulnerability. We sat in silence for a moment, the cafe's ambient noise filling the space between us, the clink of dishes and murmur of conversations creating a backdrop for our own tense reunion. There's something else, Nathan said finally, his voice lower, more guarded. Something you should know. What is it? I asked, instantly alert. He glanced around as if worried about being overheard, leaning forward across the table. Olivia's been different since Richard died. Harder, more focused on appearances and status than anything else. I've noticed the change, but kept telling myself it was grief or stress. No, it's worse than you know, he continued, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. 2 months ago, I overheard her on the phone. She was talking to someone about accelerating the timeline now that you were out of the picture. Timeline for what? I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine despite the warm coffee cup between my hands. Selling your house? He replied, his expression grim. Richard's and my house? The one we lived in for 30 years? I frowned, confusion mingling with a sense of foreboding. But that house isn't worth much. It's in an older neighborhood, and it needs work. It's not about the house. It's about the land, Nathan explained, his voice dropping even lower. Apparently there's been interest from developers. The entire block could be rezoned for commercial use. Olivia's been in talks with them for over a year. The revelation struck me like a physical blow, forcing the air from my lungs. A year, but I was still living there when Richard died. The implications dawned on me with sickening clarity. She was planning this while I was still in the house. While we were still grieving Richard's loss, Nathan nodded, unable to meet my eyes, shame evident in his posture. That's why she was so eager to get you into a retirement home. The developers want to break ground by next spring. I sat back, struggling to absorb this new betrayal, this calculated cruelty. Not just discarded, but deliberately removed so Olivia could profit from selling my home. The home where she'd grown up. Where every doorframe was marked with her height through the years. Where Richard and I had built our life together. Collected memories like precious stones. I'm sorry, Nathan said quietly, genuine regret in his voice. I should have told you sooner. I didn't know how. Why tell me now? I asked, searching his face for answers. He looked troubled, conflict playing across his features. Because it's wrong. Because Ethan found the photo albums you'd stored in the attic, the ones with all the family pictures in the trash last week. Olivia had thrown them away. His voice broke slightly, emotion bleeding through his usual composed exterior. He was crying, trying to pull them out. And Olivia she just told him they were garbage, that we needed to declutter before the move. I closed my eyes, imagining Ethan's confusion and distress, his small hands trying to rescue memories he instinctively knew were precious. When I opened them again, Nathan was watching me with something like respect. "You're stronger than all of us, Marie. You always have been." "I see that now," he said softly. "Not stronger, just older." "I've had more practice at survival," I replied, feeling the weight of years and experience in my words. He smiled sadly, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "Would next Saturday work for bringing Ethan?" I could tell Olivia I'm taking him fishing. I nodded, surprising myself with the surge of joy that rose in my chest, pushing past the hurt and betrayal. "Yes, Saturday would be perfect," I agreed, already anticipating the reunion. As we parted outside the cafe, Nathan hesitated, then said, "Richard would be proud of you. Standing your ground, finding your voice." The unexpected kindness brought tears to my eyes, a lump forming in my throat. "Thank you for saying that." I watched him walk away, this man I'd thought I knew. This person who was slowly revealing himself to be more complex than I'd realized. Not a hero, certainly not blameless, but perhaps not entirely a villain either. On the drive home, I found myself wondering about second chances. Not for Olivia, some wounds cut too deep for easy healing, but for the fractured pieces of family that remained. For Ethan. For myself. Perhaps even in some limited way for Nathan. The horizon stretched before me, endless and blue, the ocean a constant reminder of life's vastness and possibility. As I turned onto the coastal road that led to my house, I felt a profound sense of ownership wash over me. My house, my life, my terms. For the first time in years, I felt the stirrings of genuine hope, like the first buds of spring after a long, hard winter. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of September day that feels caught between seasons. Summer's warmth lingering in the air while autumn's crispness waits just around the corner. I'd been up since dawn, unable to contain my anticipation, my heart fluttering with nervous energy. Ethan was coming today. I'd spent all week preparing, baking his favorite chocolate chip cookies with extra chips just the way he liked them, setting up the spare bedroom with colorful quilts and a nightlight just in case, and clearing a space on the beach for the kite I'd bought him. I wanted everything to be perfect, even though I knew what mattered most was simply being together again. At 1000 sharp, a car pulled into the driveway, tires crunching on the gravel. I watched from the window, my heart pounding against my ribs as Nathan helped Ethan out of his booster seat. The boy looked around curiously, his small face serious as he took in the weathered shingled house and the ocean just visible beyond the dunes. Then he saw me at the window. His face transformed, breaking into a smile so radiant it brought tears to my eyes, joy spreading across his features like sunshine. He broke free from Nathan's hand and ran full tilt toward the porch, his little legs pumping, nearly stumbling in his haste. I threw open the door just as he reached the steps, my arms already outstretched. And then he was in my arms, his small body crashing into mine with the force of a tiny hurricane, his arms wrapping around my neck with desperate strength. "Grandma, Grandma, you're here!" he cried, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I held him tight, breathing in the familiar scent of his hair, still baby sweet at 7, mixed with the faint traces of the citrus shampoo he'd always insisted on. "I'm here, sweetheart. I've missed you so much," I whispered, feeling tears spill down my cheeks. "I missed you too. Mom said you went away, but I knew you wouldn't leave without saying goodbye," he said with a child's absolute certainty that made my heart ache. My eyes met Nathan's over Ethan's shoulder. He stood awkwardly by the car, hands in his pockets. Worry etched across his face. I beckoned him closer. "Come in, both of you." The morning passed in a blur of joy. Ethan explored every corner of the house with boundless enthusiasm, exclaiming over the shells I'd collected and arranged on the windowsills, the view from the upstairs window that seemed to encompass the entire ocean. The wooden sailboat Richard had carved years ago that now sat on a shelf in the living room. He chattered endlessly, filling me in on everything I'd missed, his words tumbling out in his eagerness to share his life with me. His loose tooth that wiggled when he pushed it with his tongue, the science project he'd won an award for at school, the new friend who could do perfect cartwheels. Nathan stayed mostly quiet, watching us with a complicated expression, something between guilt and relief. When Ethan ran outside to fly his new kite, the red diamond bright against the blue sky, Nathan finally spoke. "I haven't seen him this happy in months," he admitted, his voice soft with wonder. I nodded, watching through the window as Ethan's kite caught the wind, soaring high above the dunes. Children are resilient, but they notice more than we give them credit for. They feel the tension, the absence, even when we think we're protecting them. "Olivia's pushing for private school next year," Nathan said suddenly, his tone troubled. "In Connecticut. It would mean boarding during the week." Boarding at 8 years old. I couldn't hide my shock, my heart clenching at the thought. "That's awfully young to be away from home." "I know," he agreed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I've tried to talk her out of it, but she's convinced it's the best way to ensure his competitive edge." He made air quotes around the words, his distaste evident in the gesture. We fell silent, both watching Ethan as he ran along the beach, the kite dancing above him, his laughter carrying on the breeze. "I've been thinking about what you said," Nathan continued after a moment, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "About how we treated you, about the kind of family we've become." He took a deep breath, shoulders rising with the effort. "I'm not proud of the role I played." "Why did you let it happen?" I asked quietly, the question that had haunted me for years finally finding voice. He considered his answer carefully, his face troubled. At first, it was easier to go along with Olivia, to convince myself she knew best. Then it became habit, the path of least resistance. And after a while, he shook his head, words failing him momentarily. "After a while, I think I was afraid of her," he finally admitted, the confession hanging in the air between us raw and honest. "She's not the person I married," he added softly, pain evident in his voice. "Or maybe she is, and I just didn't want to see it." Before I could respond, Ethan burst through the door, cheeks flushed with excitement, bringing with him the scent of salt air and childhood joy. "Grandma, the kite went so high. Did you see? It almost touched the clouds." "I did, sweetheart." "You're a natural kite flyer," I said, grateful for the interruption. "Can we have cookies now? Dad said you made cookies." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "We certainly can. And afterward, how would you like to help me collect shells for that special jar I showed you?" Ethan's enthusiastic yes seemed to lighten the atmosphere, pushing back the shadows of our previous conversation. The afternoon passed pleasantly, filled with simple joys. We walked the beach, collecting perfect scallop shells that Ethan declared were treasure, built a sandcastle complete with moat and drawbridge, and returned to the house sandy and content. After dinner, macaroni and cheese made just the way Ethan liked it. Nathan reluctantly looked at his watch. "We should head back soon." "We told your mom we'd be home before dark," he said, regret evident in his tone. Ethan's face fell, his earlier joy dimming like a light being turned down. "Can't we stay longer? Please, Dad," he pleaded, his eyes wide and hopeful. Nathan and I exchanged glances over Ethan's head, a moment of perfect understanding passing between us. "Not today, buddy," Nathan said gently, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "But maybe we can come back soon. Promise?" Ethan looked between us, his eyes big and hopeful, demanding certainty in an uncertain world. "I promise," Nathan said firmly, surprising me with his conviction. As they prepared to leave, Ethan hugged me tightly, his small arms clinging with surprising strength. "I don't want to go," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I knelt to his level, holding his small hands in mine, looking directly into his eyes, so like Richard's. "I know, sweetheart, but you can call me any time, and I'll be right here, waiting to see you again," I assured him, forcing a smile despite the ache in my heart. "Mom threw away our pictures," he said suddenly, his voice small and confused. "The ones of you and Grandpa. I tried to save them, but she got mad." My heart broke for him, caught in the crossfire of adult conflicts he couldn't possibly understand, trying so hard to preserve connections that were being severed around him. "I have plenty of pictures here," I assured him, squeezing his hands gently. "Next time you visit, we'll look at them together. And maybe we can make copies for you to keep." He nodded solemnly, his expression too serious for his young face. "I'd like that." After one more fierce hug, he ran to the car, his momentary sadness already giving way to the resilience of childhood. Nathan and I stood alone on the porch, the setting sun casting long shadows across the lawn. "Thank you for today," I said sincerely. It meant the world to him, and to me. Nathan nodded, his expression troubled as he watched his son climb into the car. "Marie, there's something else you should know," he said hesitantly. "I'm thinking about leaving Olivia. The confession stunned me, though perhaps it shouldn't have given everything I'd observed. Because of how she treated me? I asked, trying to process this new information. That's part of it. But it's more than that, he explained, his voice low and urgent. It's who she's become. The way she treats Ethan when no one's watching. The constant pressure, the emotional manipulation, the coldness. It's not the environment I want for my son. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as a sign of his internal struggle. I've been consulting with a lawyer about custody arrangements. I took a moment to absorb this revelation, this unexpected turn in our family's story. And you're telling me this because I want Ethan to have you in his life. Because when the time comes, I may need your testimony about what you've observed in our household, he explained. His eyes met mine, sincere and troubled. And because I thought you deserved to know the truth. From the car, Ethan waved frantically, calling for his father to hurry, his small face pressed against the window. Nathan turned to go, then paused, his hand on the porch railing. We never should have done what we did to you. I hope someday you can forgive me for my part in it. I watched them drive away, Ethan's face pressed against the window, waving until they disappeared around the bend in the road. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, reflecting off the calm surface of the ocean, nature's masterpiece unfolding before me. I stood on the porch long after they'd gone, contemplating forgiveness, family, and the strange winding paths that life sometimes takes when we least expect it. 3 months later, on a crisp December morning, my doorbell rang, the sound echoing through the quiet house. Through the window, I could see Nathan's car in the driveway, Ethan bouncing excitedly beside it, his breath visible in the cold air. My heart leaped at the sight of my grandson, this unexpected joy in my life. But there was something different this time. The car was packed full, suitcases, boxes, and Ethan's favorite stuffed dinosaur visible through the window. I opened the door as they approached, questions in my eyes but a welcome on my lips. We left, Nathan said simply, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and relief. For good this time. I looked from him to Ethan, who was grinning widely despite the circumstances, his trust in the adults around him touching and terrifying. What happened? I asked, though I could guess much of it from what Nathan had shared during our previous conversations. We can talk about it later, Nathan said, glancing meaningfully at Ethan, who was already eyeing the cookies visible on the kitchen counter. Right now, we're looking for a place to stay while I sort things out. Maybe somewhere near here, he continued, his tone casual for Ethan's benefit. Ethan suggested we ask if you know of any nice neighborhoods. Understanding dawned, washing over me in a warm wave. This wasn't just a visit. This was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild what had been broken. I looked at my grandson, at his hopeful face and trusting eyes, so reminiscent of Richard's. I thought of my husband, of his quiet wisdom and foresight, how he had somehow seen this possibility even when I couldn't. I thought of the journey that had brought me here, to this moment of choice, the painful path that had led to this unexpected opportunity for healing. I might know just the place, I said, opening the door wider to welcome them in, feeling a sense of rightness settle over me. The house Richard had left me wasn't just my sanctuary anymore. It was becoming what it was always meant to be, a home filled with love, second chances, and the quiet strength that comes from choosing kindness over bitterness, even when the path is difficult. As I helped Ethan carry his backpack inside, listening to his excited chatter about the snow forecast for tomorrow, I caught a glimpse of the ocean through the window, vast and changeable and beautiful like life itself, like the future stretching before us, unwritten and full of possibility. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching.